Good morning, everyone. My name is Kamal, and I'm here to talk about applying intelligence and counterintelligence in cyber network operations. Just a little bit of introduction about me. I work with a company named Dark Matter. We are based in Abu Dhabi. I have been doing digital forensics and incident response for 7-8 years. I have been part of doing a lot of threat intelligence activity as well. And everything that I'm talking about here is based on my own experience in my current company, in my previous work experience as well. Anything being presented here does not reflect the position of my company. It's all my own thoughts. And also, I'm not here to talk about any classified information since we are talking about intelligence and counterintelligence. So if that is something that you are expecting, that you'll be disappointed because I don't have any classified information to share for intelligence activities. So to start with, why we are talking about intelligence and counterintelligence? We are here for a cybersecurity gathering. In my role of doing threat hunting and red teaming and blue teaming as well, there have been instances where you play a different kind of roles. One of them is the terrorist. Not the terrorist that we know of, but it's a more closer to the red team members because they are the kind of the people who give you the tools and technologies, and they give you those inputs which you can apply for making your cyber operations more intelligent. So the intelligence gathered from your red team it works like the opposing force, which is a well-known term in US military. Then we have the hacker or ethical hacker, as we call in the community. The usual penetration tester role, software developer, breakers, makers, a consultant. Most of us in the cybersecurity industry, we do it on a daily basis while we are trying to cover up the usual technical stuff, and at the same time trying to make the people who are non-technical and not into cyberspace, make them understand that what exactly we are into. And spy, this is something that we'll cover up in upcoming slides. And the most important thing is, yes, we are here to talk about cybersecurity. So, cyber network operations, it started as a military thing, as computer network operations. It can majorly be seen as 3 different domains: cyber network defense, cyber network exploitation, and cyber network attack. I'll be mostly talking about cyber network defense and cyber network exploitation. Attack is something that we are not covering here. Defense is of a network, a system from the adversarial attack, and how we gather the intelligence from that phase and feed into the other team and utilize it. Exploitation is the data obtained from the intelligence apparatus to support the defense activity. So both of these teams, C&D and C&E, support each other with their own intelligence gathered. I wanted to talk about intelligence and counterintelligence because these are the traditional intelligence methodologies which have been refined over the time, and nowadays into the cybersecurity we use a lot of a lot of feeds. There are a lot of buzzwords when we talk about cyber intelligence. Every day we come across people doing new research and trying to provide us a kind of a new framework or new thought process about it. But there are well-established framework from the good old days which we can apply and utilize in our current scenario with respect to your commercial organization. Seeing your commercial organization as similar to a nation state. So I'm not here to trying to stop the current process, but rather take a backseat, just look at the well-established old processes and apply the same thing in the current scenario. So this is the agenda for today. Intelligence and its applications in cyber network operations, and also about the counterintelligence. So we will deep dive into cyber network defense and cyber network exploitation, both from intelligence and counterintelligence perspective, and how we are gonna utilize that in our day-to-day work life as we work as cybersecurity consultants. So, what is national security? What exactly nation try to protect when we talk about national security? Why they emphasize a lot on applying intelligence and counterintelligence? So. If you think of a nation, they try to protect their technology, their finances, their economy, their infrastructure, and of course every state, every company, and every person has their secrets. So that's what a nation try to protect. If we look at our organizations in the same perspective, what we are trying to protect. So we try to protect the assets in our company, which help us to grow and put us in a profitable position as compared to our competitors. Whether we know or not, we contribute somehow or the other into the society through our organizations, and so our operational capabilities, our financials, our client secrets. Our research and development. So all these things, if you try to relate it with the secrets that a nation try to protect, we can actually apply the same methodology. We can apply the same thought process that a nation applies to protect themselves from other adversaries and their enemies. So because we as a company, we as person have quite a few secrets that we want to protect, so that we can put ourselves in the competition and get ahead in the market. So we'll try to apply the same techniques. We'll see what are those techniques, what are those methodologies, and how we can actually apply in our cyber network operations. So when we talk about intelligence, it's essentially collecting, analyzing, and exploiting the information that supports a specific cause, that gives you some power, that gives you some knowledge. And when we talk about cyber intelligence or cyber security, there is a lot of hype these days that we need to avoid. A general notion these days is whenever we talk about threat intelligence or cyber intelligence, people are very much attracted to different kind of feeds. So just getting a feed is not it's not intelligence. It is just an additional source of collection that you are getting in, maybe from a third party, maybe from another source, but that is not essentially intelligence that you are acquiring. It is just another form of information that you need to apply in the intelligence life cycle that we will look into the upcoming slides. and how you can utilize it in your cyber network operations on daily basis. So one of the objectives of intelligence is to support yourself, support your company in such a way that it gives you the power and knowledge and competencies to get ahead in the market. Specifically talking about, specifically giving you insight into a lot of things that you can deduce from the feeds that you are getting in. So, a really brief history about intelligence. If you think of the intelligence activities, you can get kind of references as old as in a lot of religious mythological books as well, be it Bible or any other religious book. There has been not direct but a lot of indirect references. Also, the early days of cryptography, where they used a lot of cryptographic methodologies to pass on information, to protect it from their adversaries. And in the modern days, Title 10 in the US military function and Title 50 in national security and foreign intelligence. So it's like every country has, although they have their military operations, they surely have a dedicated workforce, a dedicated personnel, a dedicated wing for handling intelligence and counterintelligence. In early 20th century, when we started getting more into the cybersecurity world, we started seeing a lot of private intelligence services, both on the personal side as well as the cyber side. And today we see a lot of overlap between both of these. What are those techniques which were being used in those old days for intelligence, and how we can correlate that to cyber network operations? So with respect to cyber network operations, it's a multiple source intelligence product, and it includes a lot of counterintelligence as well. You can think of a lot of different sort of intelligence functions like signal intelligence, open source intelligence, human intelligence, and those and a lot of these were being used in the usual intelligence and counterintelligence activities by the state nations in almost every country. These sort of intelligence activities are widely used in cyber network operations as well. Whether you are working as a red team member, a blue team member, you are an investigator, forensicator, malware analyst, you somewhere you apply those techniques. You just need to be maybe a little aware about that, how we are correlating that with the existing framework of intelligence, and not getting lost into trying to discover something new just because this is related to cyber. There are a lot of other disciplines as well when we talk about intelligence, apart from open source intelligence, human intelligence, and signal intelligence. So starting with the signals intelligence, this is a lot of folks among us have already been doing this, which can further be seen as two different activities: communication intelligence and electronic intelligence. So communication intelligence is the day-to-day network operations that we do, which is related to the network traffic, SSL, TLS inspection, network-based DLP, a lot of other network-based feeds and network-based information that you ingest on daily basis, and you try to feed in to whatever solutions you are using or whatever solution you are trying to develop. And communication intelligence is probably one of the most recognized form of intelligence collection today. And electronic intelligence is something which is based on the non-communication, very close to the signals data, be it your GPS signals, missile operations, anything that does not contain the usual network communication signals can be seen as the electronic intelligence. And there is a lot of application both in cyber network defense and cyber network exploitation. So from because I'm working in the defense side, I can very much relate to all these activities for network traffic monitoring, SSL and TLS inspection, network-based DLP, a lot of other host-based data that you collect, anything which is coming from the computers. This is surely being used by a lot of C&D guys. And when you talk about cyber network exploitation, performing man-in-the-middle attack, you are looking into all this communication, trying to pick it up in between. So what essentially are you doing? You are essentially applying the intelligence technique over there. Something which is passing through, you are just picking it up, and you are trying to do exactly the same thing that usual intelligence and counterintelligence operations guys do. Open source intelligence is in cybersecurity world, a lot of guys will argue that probably this is probably the only form of intelligence today, which is somewhat kind of true, because when we talk about applying intelligence in doing exploitation or doing even for on the defense side or investigation side, we use a lot of open source intelligence, which covers a lot of data coming from open source feeds. It could be DNS, IP, geolocation, any information leakages that we come across every day. So some people also argue that there is something like a closed source intelligence as well. That could be payment information, policies applied in the company, a lot of these things that you don't come across in the open world. So open source intelligence is something which is widely used as well. Human intelligence, this is very interesting and very close to applying intelligence techniques. I have been using a lot of human intelligence in my previous experience, doing a lot of investigation, interrogation as well. A lot of stuff related to human intelligence is very common to your other operations which are not into cyber. For example, your human resource. So when they are recruiting, are they able to find out the guy that you are talking to is not a spy? What is the history of that guy? Whether are you applying the proper human intelligence techniques over there, not just looking into the technical capability of the person, but also the human factor behind that. So what is the objective? What is the objective of human intelligence? It is a widely recognizable form of intelligence, and this is typically where the human espionage system comes into the play. And you have to keep in mind what are the sources where you can get from where you can get the human intelligence information. A lot of these have been applied in the past and today as well in crisis-related sources like refugees, humanitarian crises, detainees, leadership-related sources, diplomatic embassies, local leadership. All these functions apply a lot of human intelligence, and again, when we try to relate the our organization capabilities with the nation state capabilities, we can apply the same techniques when we are doing a kind of recruiting, or when you are an investigator, or even if you are a forensic guy. How do you relate the human intelligence factor with the technical evidences that you gather? So this is a typical intelligence cycle. Please excuse my poorly drawn diagram, but this is a typical intelligence cycle where we start with the tasking, collection, go to the processing, analysis, and dissemination. This is a typical intelligence cycle that all intelligence groups usually apply, and we can apply the same techniques while we work in the cyber operations. And there are high chances that most of us are already doing it at different, we have already been doing it at different stages in our life, in different stages of our work experience, whether we are aware or not, and in daily basis as well. It helps you to in decision making, how you can quickly gather the information, and how quickly you can process it and apply it in your cyber operations. So let's take an example of cyber network exploitation, where a red team can leverage the intelligence cycle and gather some intelligence, feed in that intelligence to the other team, and how that can be applied. So let's take an example that there is a team who is doing some sort of offensive activity, cyber offensive operation, and they got their target. They know that whom they are targeting. They try to gather some information using open source intelligence. They achieve some information using open source intelligence. They start doing the collection, acquiring information regarding the employees, infrastructure, management, and a lot of other open source intelligence. Process and analyze this collected information and deliver it to the upper management, whether this is something which you are looking for. But they come to know that, okay, this is not enough information. We need to go a little more deeper. And they want to launch a campaign directly targeting the other organization. They try everything like social engineering, web application attacks, network penetration, try to gather human intelligence of the families of the employees. So even if these guys were not able to gather the information they wanted to, they still got some information. They still got some information which can be feed into the top level. That helps again to take your decision that what do you want to do next. Exactly applying the intelligence cycle. So based on the intelligence that was gathered in this phase, decision is made to probably up the risk level. Let's go to a little closer to the company which we are trying to target, and physically go to that host country if that organization is in a different country. So they try to go a little more offensive. They go on site. They start probably using ROG APs, try to catch Wi-Fi signals, got to break a few passwords, and with that information, you were able to get into a few user accounts. So at the end of this activity, what exactly they got? They got access. The Wi-Fi provided them more enough to start additional collection, getting into employee information, getting into more passwords and all. And this information, once collected, feeds back into the additional objective, again into the decision making, and the phase, the whole cycle again starts with the tasking. So they started with the collection, they processed it, provided it to the decision makers. Based on that, the decision is made, and again the whole life cycle starts until and unless you get what exactly you are looking for. If you apply the same cycle in the defensive side, for example, threat hunting. So if you take an example that you are the company who were targeted in the previous example, how do you, and you have no idea that you have been penetrated. One day one of your, your IT team applies some updates, and they got to see some AV signatures, and which looks like a little dirty, and your internal threat hunting team decided to get into a little more deep threat hunting activity. So what they do, they invited a third-party threat hunting team to get a little more information that what exactly has happened. So there is a incident response and threat hunting team there. They come fully armed with a SOC in a box, leveraging custom ISEs, full network packet captures, EDR, SSL inspection, neutralization, everything. And they try to go all over the organization, trying to collect as much as information they can collect. So they start collecting. They are capturing all the event logs, processes, applications, firewall, everything that they can think of, everything that they can get access of. Now they start processing this information. They start reducing the noise, trying to reduce the signal to noise ratio. They isolated some traffic, cross-references the traffic with the initial detection from the AV or whatever solution that you are using, and analytics of the data gathered was done, and it started to build a picture, and a picture started to emerge, and you got to know that you were compromised. What exactly was that? But that is probably not evident as of now. But you get to see that there was a compromise probably 6 months back. So this information is passed on to the management, who decide based on the information that you have, that what exactly you want to do next. Probably you would want to involve another team to utilize this intelligence gathered and probably go a little more deeper. So the intelligence collected from the previous phase in threat hunting, you involved forensic guys, malware analysts, reverse engineers to come in and work with the threat hunters. Their task. So how do they work? From where do they start? They cannot simply go blind, just picking up anything and start reversing, or picking up random computers and taking disk images, RAM images, and start doing forensics. So obviously you need to give in some feeds, some intelligence, and that is how you can probably minimize the time to respond. So their work is based on the intelligence gathered on the previous phase. Their tasking is based on whatever threat hunting guys have provided them. They start the process of collecting the information for their purpose, which would be RAM images, disk images, PCAPs, maybe mobile phones as well. They conduct interviews. They apply some sort of human intelligence, interrogations, questions like which all guys you connected in the past 10 days, what all websites that you can remember, or what all pop-ups that you could see on your system based on the traffic that you have seen. And again, the information that is collected from the analysis, forensic analysis, as well as malware analysis, reverse engineering is fed back to the threat hunting cycle, and it starts again with this information, with the more targeted information. The threat hunting cycle starts again. the whole process of collecting the information starts, and the information is fed back again to the next level team. So this is a typical example of applying intelligence in cyber network defense operations. Based on this whole exercise, a picture is drawn up for the management, to the organization to make a decision, and that is how a lot of nations take the decisions based on these activities when there are specific teams, when there are specific operations team provide them the information. So possibly what could be the best thing that we can do after all this activity is done? I can probably think of the best possible thing that we can do is information sharing. When you share this information with others, they can utilize the same intelligence that you have already gathered. I mean, rather than depending on some feeds that you are not aware of, you can probably whatever intelligence that you have gathered in your threat hunting cycle, you can share this information with other parties, other people in the community, so that they don't have to get into the same cycle again, because you are utilizing the well-established framework to gather that information. So at the end of the day, after all this activity, regardless of whether you are part of the red team or the blue team, where you are attacker or the defender, the objectives are made. Their objectives are to leverage the intelligence that was gathered and apply it in your cybersecurity space, and whatever results have you obtained, pass it on into the community who can utilize the same intelligence techniques. And if you notice, one of the things that we did was, especially on the defensive side, was threat hunting. And based on the information that you collected from threat hunting, was the other team worked. You cannot do threat hunting unless you know your assets. And this is a well-known quote that many of us might have heard from the chief of NSA, who spoke at the B-sides, that you have to got to know your systems, devices, and vulnerabilities better than your enemy. Because information is power. I mean, you cannot defend that you don't know. And also, they are putting in a lot of time, and if we get busy putting in time every time doing the same thing, we might be behind them always. So once we apply those techniques, we need to make sure that we have the information about the assets, our systems, our devices, and everything else better than our enemies, and well in time, and keep feeding that information into some sort of intelligence cycle, so that that information is always available for your offensive team as well as the defensive team. So again, applications of intelligence into cyber network operations is there have been examples that we see that we have seen in cyber network operations. Remember in the first slide, in the second slide, we talked about different roles. One of them was a spy, and this is what exactly we try to do in our daily activities as cybersecurity analyst. You have to be like a spy in your own job, where what they do, they try to gather as much as information from the human side, from the open source, from cyber, from any other source that you can think of. So be the spies of your own network. Try to get as much as information. Try to get insight of every nook and cranny in your company. Become the collectors, become the analyst, become more educated in taking decisions and helping your decision makers. we'll get into understanding counterintelligence and its applications into usual cyber network operations. So counterintelligence is essentially a subset of intelligence itself, and it supports the protection of an intelligence collection apparatus. It's just the other side of doing intelligence activity. We'll see it how, and it is definitely not always related to espionage activities. It is more on it is more being proactive for everything that you might get attacked of. So the usual counterintelligence is focused on these four things: deterrence, which is a defensive counterintelligence; detection, which is again defensive as well as offensive. We'll see it how. Deception and disruption, which is again offensive counterintelligence. So there are multiple ways to look at it. We'll see how we can look at all these ways of applying counterintelligence. So this is an ideal situation that we can think of, or any company can think of. It is intended to be relatable. Most of the times it doesn't happen, but we can think of this as an ideal situation, that we have mature processes, policies, procedures, and operationally effective in the company. Technologies in place have been properly configured. One team is aware of the other activities. That this is what a typical case, that you have a blue team, you have a red team, and most of the times they are not aware of what the other team is exactly doing. You don't have any intelligence coming from your counterpart of the team. So we only know that, okay, there is a team who is more into attack, and how they are trying to attack, how they are trying to be on the offensive side, what kind of information that they have which we don't have. So we start with the defensive side, where we have a blue team. They get into the data center. They're not aware that the red team is targeting them, and they have been noticing an increase in the network traffic, some sort of malicious activities, port scanning, web application firewalls. They get into the data center. They got an alert from a few devices, some sort of ROG devices entering into your environment via some DHCP network, DHCP monitoring on a switch. So they detect some initial enumeration of systems using some deception network and behavioral analysis. They observe some network traffic, some sort of attack scenarios, and they think that, okay, there is some sort of bad activities going on. They inform the incident response team. A kill chain operation is executed, and they neutralize it right there. Well, everything is good. Recovery of the devices. They obtained those devices which appeared malicious, to find out more information, probably do some forensics, malware analysis, and try to find out the attack activity. So this is a typical situation. When they get into the data center looking at the attack activities, they were not aware that it was a legitimate activity. What happened that a red team is also working. The red team exercise target your organization at data center. They perform reconnaissance, penetrate the facility, probably using the back entrance, get into the data center. Your security guy, the physical security guy probably didn't notice it. So they decided, so the red team decided to go covert, just somehow dodging the CCTV camera, penetrating the facility, and they get into a data center, and they did whatever implants they wanted to do in the data center, and they were able to successfully exit probably from the front door with all their badges, and probably the security guy didn't notice, because every time you get into the data center, you are making some entry, and when we're coming out, the security guy thinks that, okay, this guy had probably already signed a register, or probably he is already authorized. But you enter from the back side, you are coming from the front entrance, and the security guy doesn't know, and he cannot provide any information to any other team. So what happened at the end of the scenario? Both these teams got something. So the red team was successfully executed a covert operation, although the outcome was not ideal. Probably all the objectives were not achieved, because while they were doing the red team activity, it was detected by the blue team. They were there, they neutralized it. So a feedback loop begins. The red team provide the inputs to the blue team that we were able to do all these activities. This is something that you need to look in. This is something that you need to feed into your intelligence cycle. At the same time, your blue team need to provide the intelligence to the red team that how easily they were able to detect the red team operations, all those offensive activities, and this continues. So it's a win-win situation for both the team. How do we apply the counterintelligence methodologies in the cyber network operations? Starting with the defensive counterintelligence, it starts with the usual risk assessment methodology. We don't, whether we know or not, this is where we are actually applying the defensive counterintelligence. Physical security, personal security, information security, communication security. It's all part of the deterrence and detection, which we need to think of when we are looking at cyber network operations. This is a typical consequence and likelihood that you can think of when you are applying risk assessment methodologies. You can leverage sort of similar framework or maybe a different framework to identify the likelihood of the risk, which essentially helps you to feed in that information to the other teams, that what can be done or what has been done already and what is missing. This is a typical risk matrix that you can think of, which can provide some inputs to your red team as well as the blue team, based on which what kind of actions you need to take. Deterrence and detection, a lot of activities. It's encompass everything that it can cover, starting from physical security to scenario is like a red team is if the red team is not able to get after a certain level because of the kind of security posture in your company, that's a kind of good deterrence, and that is something that that needs to be there. So the same thing for the defense side, the cyber network defense side. Their own security controls force the red team into entering into a high risk penetration, because if you didn't have proper security controls, if there were not proper blue team, if there was not a strong blue team over there, the red team probably would have easily got into whatever they wanted to take away from the data center. This is a very basic and generic deterrence option. This is a primary component of protection of information, of physical assets and infrastructure. And in the example that we saw, if somehow red team was able to get into the data center and come out as well with whatever information they wanted. So here we are talking about a lot of things: doors, locks, windows, access control, CCTV, lightning, everything. So containment. These systems should serve not only as a deterrent, but as a detection and prevention mechanism as well. If you don't have all these proper mechanism, again, a red team or an offensive team will be able to do the sort of activity they are interested in. Personal security, again, deterrence and detection applies here as well. Everything falls into this category. Remember, we talked about human intelligence. So a lot of things about background checks and screening, role-based access control. This is a typical example of doing. This is a typical example where you can actually apply counterintelligence in general, all sort of gatherings that we are all aware of. When you come across people, are you able to do some sort of background check before you sharing your information? Anybody just coming up to you and asking that, can I scan the code behind your badge? Do you know whether there's a person as a part of the crew, whether he is authorized to take that information or not? So a lot of background checks and screening, role-based access control, policies and inspections of social media accounts, a few basic things like personal security is designed with the idea of preventing unwanted employees from acquiring positions as well as preventing insider threats. So this makes a major part of personal deterrence and detection. Information security, a whole lot about document safeguarding, document transfer, document protection, handling data classification, mobile phones, bring your own devices, video, audio recording in the workplace. All these policies needs to be in place to help you to be in a position to save your secrets and information that you try to protect. Communication security is a preventive measure to ensure that interception and manipulation of communication traffic is computationally infeasible. You need to have proper encryption in emails and instant messaging. It should not, it's like if you are sending sensitive documents without proper encryption, your phone communication, radio systems, whether you know or not, there are people listening to your conversations. So properly implemented communication security is not only a deterrent. Once a breach has occurred, it also helps you to detect things. So applying deterrence and all these part of counterintelligence in cyber network operations. So deterrence and detection are the primary drivers of the defensive counterintelligence. But it is widely used as in IT departments, networking departments, and they're already doing it on every single day, whether they know or not. Your recruitment, HR, has a role in defense, whether they were able to spot a spy when they were doing the recruitment or not. Does the HR have a system in place which engages the employee for better happiness? That's a part of the defensive counterintelligence. But even on a more centric level, every time you stand up a new firewall, every time you assign new access right, the access controls, user account, all the access rights in Active Directory, how does the intelligence of your organization collects about itself being leveraged to deter and detect? A lot of host-based intelligence, all these activities are a part of defensive counterintelligence. Offensive counterintelligence is like red teaming exercises and adversary simulations against your organization. All these activities are applied by the red team. Whether they try to find out whether they are being detected or not. What kind of tools and techniques they should be applying that it is not detected when you are doing the offensive operation. Not for enemies, but you have to be the spies, or you have to apply the counterintelligence for your own organization. So So one little thing that you need to do is you need to switch it up every now and then. Ask your red team to work as a blue team and ask your blue team to work as a red team to understand what kind of stuff the other team is able to get into. So there is no value, and that is how you, I think that's the best way to feed in the intelligence. When your red team works as a blue team, they are essentially using the intelligence that they have from the red team activities, and the same thing applies on the blue team. Whatever techniques they apply for the detection and all, when they go on the other side, how they are applying the intelligence that they have as counterintelligence when they act as a blue team. Detection rights, it should not be the case that something has happened somewhere and I have seen something. It should always be very specific, that what happened, who is involved, identifying the person, people, systems, anything. So, and you cannot do it unless you have a proper intelligence feed. Detection is deception. So now, when you're trying to, you might not be involved in this directly when you are doing detection, but however, depending on your position in the company, depending on the kind of role that you are into, you might be doing detection at different level during interviews, interrogations, while you are a part of, if you are a part of security operations, monitoring the electronic communications, physical security, all that thing is related to the detection activities. Deceptions, deception is kind of, there are two types of deceptions, active and passive. Active is like purposefully misleading an individual or group, and passive is, this is without withholding the information from an, so sometimes you need to, sometimes your organization or the other team is aware that what kind of deception technology are we using internally, and sometimes you have to use the technologies that the other guys are not aware in your company, so that you can actually detect the bad guys if they are within the company. So but call it whatever you will. This concept of active, this is active defense. The concept of active defense is based on an age-old tradition of deception. This is the kind of techniques which have been used well in the past, and this is not something new. So if we are not doing it now, both active and passive deception within our organizations, we need to do it now. The offensive counterintelligence principle of neutralization's primary responsibility is what typically is known as counter-espionage. We have to be always prepared for the espionage activities, not essentially as a nation, because at the very beginning we try to understand that we have to look our company, our assets, our information as a nation state, and we need to apply the same methodology, we need to apply the same mindset of counter espionage as the nation state. So detection, deception, and neutralization can and should always be leveraged in your organization. After all, it's our organization, it's our information, it's our secrets. So give a shot at looking at these concepts in the terms of technologies you have in place, and with the existing technologies we already have in the company, we need to reinvent, we need to just reinvent, we probably need to reframe whatever we have, rather than trying to get into something new, just running around with new vendors. It's just looking for new feeds. You can actually utilize whatever you already have in your organization, and you can actually use that. So the idea behind all this discussion that we had is that modern cyber network operations, whether defensive or offensive, suffer a lot of unique predicament, because as professionals in the field of cybersecurity, we come across a lot of overload of information, defining return on investments, metrics, politics, a lot of things. And all the while we try to seek the same goals as age-old physical world-related intelligence and counterintelligence. We can apply the same techniques of intelligence as well as counterintelligence that we saw in our day-to-day activity. So by just reframing the context of our daily cybersecurity duties into an intelligence and counterintelligence perspective, regardless of the offensive or defensive nature of the work, we can better protect our organization by leveraging the age-old, well-established framework, the fundamentals and the practices that we have been applying in the physical world as a person, and as nations as well. So that's about it. If any questions, if you have any questions, or even after, you can catch me up after the lunch. Maybe it was a long talk. Any questions, you can catch me up at our booth. Good, thank you.